My husband was on a boat working when his friend Steve came to stay with me for the night. He was drunk and needed attention, but you won't believe what happened between us that night. It's strange, isn't it? How some stories start with a doorbell in the rain. I'm sitting here at the kitchen table, the one I refinished myself after our 25th wedding anniversary. The light above me hums low and yellow, and there's a slight draft from the window to my left, though I've tried to seal it a dozen times. My cup of tea's gone lukewarm, but I don't really care. This story, this confession, really has been sitting on my chest for months like a stone I can't quite shake off. I need to let it out, even if it means painting myself in a light I never thought I'd stand in. You see, that night changed something in me. It was late October. The leaves outside had gone golden and started to fall, swirling around the porch like they were dancing with ghosts. My husband, Rick, was out on one of his seasonal crab runs, up north along the coast, somewhere between Oregon and Alaska. He does this every fall. Says the ocean settles his mind, though I've always wondered what else he's running from. That evening, I was curled up on the couch watching an old black and white movie, the kind with heavy stares and women in dresses that always looked a bit too tight around the ribs. I had a quilt around my legs and a half glass of red wine in my hand when I heard the knock. It wasn't gentle. I opened the door to see Steve, Rick's oldest friend. Steve, with his salt and pepper beard and eyes that always looked like they'd just heard bad news. He was leaning against the porch post, shoulders slumped, a bottle dangling from one hand and a suitcase from the other. He looked up at me through the rain and tried to smile. "Hey, darling," he slurred, voice thick with whiskey. I didn't know where else to go. "Now, before you judge me, or him, let me explain something." Steve had been in our lives for years. He was Rick's best man, godfather to our son, who now lives down in Austin, and a fixture at every holiday dinner. He was also recently divorced, messy and painful. His ex-wife had run off with a younger man from her yoga class. And Steve, well, he'd taken it hard. I stepped aside without thinking. "Come in before you drown." He staggered in, leaving a trail of water on the wood floor, and I helped him out of his jacket. "It was soaked through, heavy and cold. You're shivering," I said. He didn't answer. He just looked at me, really looked. Not like Rick does, not like a neighbor or a brother-in-law. His eyes were glassy, but something in them held a kind of hunger I hadn't seen in years. Not desire, exactly. Just need. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I wouldn't have come, but I knew you'd be here." I made him tea, he didn't want it, and offered him the guest room. He sat down on the couch, letting out a long sigh, like it had been months since he'd exhaled. I didn't know what to say, so I just sat beside him, careful to leave a cushion's worth of space between us. "You ever think about how it all turns out?" he asked suddenly. "Like, this isn't what we imagined at 25, right?" "No," I said. "Not even close." He laughed bitterly. "Rick's lucky. He's got you." I looked away. The way he said it, it was simple, but it stung. Like Rick had something he didn't fully appreciate. And maybe he didn't. I'd been feeling that for a while. Rick and I had drifted into that comfortable silence that feels more like distance than peace. We didn't fight, we just stopped noticing each other. "I'll get you a blanket," I said, rising. He caught my hand, not tightly, just enough to make me pause. His fingers were rough, warm despite the chill, and there was that silence between us, the kind that's louder than any argument. "You always smell like cinnamon," he murmured. I felt something flutter in my chest, something I wasn't proud of. I pulled my hand back gently, heart tapping out a rhythm I hadn't felt since my early 30s. "Steve, I know," he said, closing his eyes. "I shouldn't." He lay back against the cushions, exhausted, and within minutes, he was asleep. I stood there for a long time, staring at him. There was something peaceful in his face, something raw and open. Vulnerability looks different on a man his age, it's heavier. More honest. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my bed listening to the storm outside, the wind rattling the eaves, my thoughts louder than the rain. In the morning, I found him in the kitchen. He had made coffee, which surprised me. He didn't look like the man who'd stumbled in the night before. His hair was combed back, shirt buttoned up. "Didn't mean to fall apart on you," he said, handing me a mug. "I'm sorry. I took the coffee." "Don't apologize. We all fall apart sometimes." He smiled. That soft, crooked smile that made him look younger. "You always were too kind." There was a long pause, the kind where something unspoken is waiting between two people like a held breath. I should go, he said, but he didn't move. Where to? He shrugged. Doesn't matter, does it? He stepped closer. I didn't move back. We were just inches apart now, and I felt my pulse in my throat. You ever think, he whispered, that in another life? I stopped him right there. We only get this life, I said, but the truth was, I had thought about it. Not before that night, but in that moment, yes. I thought about the way he looked at me like I was seen, not just known. He left later that morning, suitcase in hand, no umbrella. And when he walked away down the path, he turned around once. Just once. And in that glance, he said everything he couldn't the night before. And I haven't told Rick. Not because something happened, but because something almost did. And sometimes, that's even worse. Sometimes, almost feels like betrayal too. I tried to forget it, brush it off like dust on a shelf. But something about that night lingered like perfume on a sweater you didn't know still held scent. And Steve? Well, he didn't stay gone for long. 3 weeks had passed, and I'd gone back to my routine: grocery lists, book club, Zoom calls with my sister in Denver. Rick had sent 2 emails and 1 garbled voicemail in that time. The fishing season was brutal this year. Short on hands. Big swell warnings. He said he was sleeping on a cot no wider than a church pew. I tried to sound concerned, tried to remind myself he was doing all this for us. But that felt like a lie, somehow. And then, Steve showed up again. It was a Sunday morning. I'd just finished sweeping leaves off the porch when I saw his truck pull into the drive. He got out slowly, wearing jeans and a flannel, holding something behind his back. I raised an eyebrow. Back to finish the bottle? No, he grinned. This time, I brought coffee. Truce. I laughed, too quickly, too nervously, and stepped aside. Come in. He handed me a warm paper bag. Inside, 2 cinnamon rolls. My favorite. He remembered. We sat at the kitchen table, this same one, his eyes trailing along the wood grain like he was trying not to look directly at me. You been okay? He asked. I nodded, sipping my coffee. Fine. Lonely sometimes. He tilted his head. Rick still out there chasing crabs? Yeah. Said he might be home by the end of the month. Steve tapped his fingers on the mug. You ever wonder if he even knows what he's got? I gave him a look. Don't start. He held up his hands. I'm just saying. If I had a woman like you waiting for me back home. Steve, I said, setting down my mug. You can't keep coming here and saying things like that. He leaned in slightly. Why not? It's the truth. I swallowed hard. His voice was low, steady, not slurred this time. And something about it made me feel guilty. Flattered. Alive because I'm married, I said softly. He looked at me, then really looked. But are you happy? That question hit me like cold water. I stood and walked to the window. The maple tree out front had lost nearly all its leaves. Its branches looked like arms reaching for something that had already passed. It's not about happiness, I said after a long pause. It's about commitment. Loyalty. He came to stand beside me. Not close. Not touching. Just near enough for me to feel the heat from his shoulder. You don't have to settle for a life that feels like waiting, he said. I turned to him, eyes stinging. You think I don't know that? His jaw clenched. For a moment, I thought he was going to say something else, something foolish, but he didn't. Instead, he pulled a small envelope from his jacket and placed it on the counter. What's this? Something I was working on, he said. A cabin. Out by Lake Chelan. Needs fixing up, but it's peaceful. I've been going there on weekends. You should see it sometime. I laughed, nervously. What are you suggesting? Nothing, he said quickly. Just, if you ever need space. It's yours. He left not long after that. And I stared at the envelope for hours before opening it. Inside was a photo, weathered and sun-bleached, of a small wooden cabin tucked between trees and mountains. On the back, written in his uneven scrawl, you deserve quiet that loves you back. That night, I dreamed of water. Not crashing waves, but stillness. A lake. A canoe. A breeze across my bare shoulders. And Steve, sitting at the other end of the boat, not saying a word, just watching me with those unreadable eyes. Rick called the next morning. His voice sounded tired, like he was carrying the weight of too many days. I told him about the garden. The dog next door. I didn't mention Steve. Later that week, at book club, my friend Joyce asked me if something was wrong. "You've been quiet," she said, leaning in. "Like you're somewhere else." I waved her off. "Just tired." But I was somewhere else. In my head, I kept returning to the cabin. I pictured myself there, walking barefoot across creaky floorboards, watching the sunrise spill gold across the lake. I pictured peace. A different kind of love, and that terrified me. One evening, I took a long walk through town. I passed the old theater, the bakery, the little flower shop where Rick used to buy me peonies in May. I stopped in front of it and stood there, staring at the closed sign, remembering the last time he surprised me with flowers. I think it was 5 years ago. When I got home, the envelope was still on the counter. I picked it up. Touched the photo again. Turned it over. "You deserve quiet that loves you back." I didn't go. "I want you to know that." Not yet, but I thought about it, and thinking about it felt like a betrayal all its own. A week later, I ran into Steve again, at the grocery store of all places. He was in the produce aisle, holding a ridiculous bunch of parsley. "You cooking now?" I teased, pushing my cart up beside his. He grinned. "Trying." We chatted. Harmless enough. But as I turned to leave, he said something that stopped me cold. "I think about that night all the time," he said. "Not what didn't happen. What almost did." I froze. "The air between us felt too thin." "I shouldn't have come here today," he added quietly. "But I missed the sound of your voice." He didn't touch me. He didn't need to. His words did enough damage. I didn't reply. I just walked away, my heart thudding like a drum in my chest. That night, I sat at this table, staring at my phone. I thought about calling Rick. About telling him everything. About asking, "Do you still see me?" But I didn't. Instead, I whispered to the quiet, "What am I doing?" And the quiet, as it turns out, whispered nothing back. My husband was on a boat working when his friend Steve came to stay with me for the night. He was drunk and needed attention, but you won't believe what happened between us that night. But what happened after? That's where the real story lives. I've already told you what led us to the edge, the longing, the quiet moments, the words not said. I told you about the cabin, the photograph, and that cold morning when Rick found it. What I haven't told you is how it all unraveled from there. How one night, just one night, can echo into every corner of a marriage, even without a kiss, even without a touch. This morning, I stood by the sink peeling apples for a pie I didn't even want to eat. Rick was out on the porch fixing the screen door, something he hadn't touched in 2 years. That's how I know he's hurting. He only fixes things when he doesn't know what else to do with himself and me. I fix things in my head. I replay conversations. Rewrite them. Add the right words I should have said. Take away the ones I wish I hadn't. It's been 2 days since Rick found the photo, and we've been moving around each other like ghosts. He didn't ask me to explain again. Didn't press me for more details. He just looks at me sometimes like he's trying to decide if the woman he married is still inside me, or if I left her behind somewhere on that porch, the night Steve said I smelled like cinnamon. I wanted to talk. But the words feel dangerous now. Like one wrong sentence might finish the undoing. So I baked a pie. Stupid, I know. But in a house full of things we can't say, butter and flour are the only things that feel safe. Steve hasn't reached out since the confrontation. I think he knew, somehow, that Rick found out. Or maybe I've just been too afraid to check. Either way, the silence from him is deafening in its own way. Like someone slammed a door, and I was the one left on the porch this time. After dinner, another quiet affair with clinking forks and not much else. I finally broke. "I didn't sleep with him," I said. "Rick didn't look up from his plate." "You've told me that. But I keep thinking that if I'd done something, actually done something, you'd have a reason to hate me. A reason to yell, to leave, to do something. But instead, we're just sitting in this limbo where you don't trust me and I can't fix it." He chewed slowly, set his fork down, and leaned back in his chair. His eyes were tired. Not angry. Just emptied out. "I don't hate you," he said. "That's the problem." "Then what do you feel?" He shook his head. Like I wasn't enough. The air between us sagged under the weight of that sentence. I wanted to reach for his hand, to say you are, but the truth is, he wasn't. Not lately. And I wasn't enough for him either. We'd both been coasting. And the worst part? We didn't even realize it until someone else showed up in the middle of the road. I don't know how to fix this, I whispered. He didn't answer. Just stood, walked to the sink, and rinsed his plate like we were strangers sharing a rental for the weekend. That night, I didn't sleep again. I sat by the window, arms around my knees like a girl too scared to face the morning, and sometime around 3 a.m., I did something reckless. I wrote a letter. To Steve. I didn't say much, just the truth. I came to the cabin because I was lost. Not because I wanted to leave my life, but because I wasn't sure it was mine anymore. You were kind, and steady, and you made me feel something I hadn't felt in a long time, wanted. But you and I, we live in a moment that was never meant to last. And if I stay too long in that memory, I'll lose everything else. I hope you find what you're looking for. But I can't be it. I didn't send it. I burned it. But writing it down, somehow that was the first breath I'd taken in weeks. The next morning, Rick was already up, sitting on the back porch with coffee. I joined him, and for a long while we didn't speak. Then he said, "Did you love him?" I didn't lie. "No, but you could've," he said. "Maybe. If I'd let myself." He nodded slowly. "Then I guess I'm lucky you didn't." I looked at him. Really looked at him. There was gray in his beard I hadn't noticed before. Wrinkles around his eyes from years of salt and sun and squinting at sea. He wasn't the man I married, not exactly. But then again, I wasn't the woman he married either. We'd both changed. Maybe too much. Maybe not enough. "I miss us," I said quietly. He looked out at the trees. "Me too." We sat there until the coffee went cold, and the silence between us wasn't so painful anymore. That night, he reached for my hand in bed. Just that. Nothing more. And I held it like it was the most fragile thing in the world, because it was, because trust isn't rebuilt with grand gestures. It's rebuilt with mornings. With pie. With a hand held at night when you're too afraid to speak. This story doesn't end with fireworks. It doesn't end with some perfect vow or a sunset drive. It ends here, in this house, with two people trying to find their way back, because love isn't about staying unbroken. It's about choosing each other even when the cracks start to show, and sometimes, the hardest part isn't surviving betrayal,